Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Hustle and Harmony. You're here with Ashley and Alyssa, my co-host, and our special guest today, Claire Incontrera, who you'll hear all about here in the next couple of minutes and have an amazing conversation lined up for you. So, for those of you that are new to Hustle and Harmony, we're really dedicated to just empowering women to live purpose-filled lives. We want to help cultivate, a sense of harmony in your life in today's hustle culture that we all know too well, right? And so we're hoping to bring more women to you that can share different experiences and just hopefully shift some thoughts so that you can, incorporate them in your day to day and live, a way that's more purposeful and meaningful to you. And so today we're really excited to have Claire with us, and I'll share a little bit about her before we get started. So Claire Incontrera is the owner, founder, and lead instructor at Soleil Studio, a boutique fitness studio and smoothie bar located in Lewes, Delaware. She's a group fitness veteran, and Claire began her group fitness career teaching Les Mills Body Pump in 2018. And after completing her 200-hour teaching training in 2019, she became a power and sculpt instructor at Core Power Yoga before going on to found Soleil. Outside of the fitness world, she held a leadership role and was widely respected and recognized PR and social media professional. She spent over a decade in the industry, mostly at Baltimore agency TBC, and Claire built and led social media and PR teams and brought in millions of dollars of revenue for the agency while leading national accounts, including KT Tape, McCormick and Co., and Bizzuto. And most recently, she served as vice president at San Diego-based RK PR before exiting the agency world to open her studio. We're going to hear all about that. And outside of the studio, Claire likes to spend her free time traveling with her husband, Tom. They also enjoy spending time with their two dogs, Ruby and Coco. She's an avid sports fan. You can find her cheering on the Maryland Terps, Baltimore Ravens, and the Baltimore Orioles throughout the year. So welcome, Claire. I loved your intro, and I have to give a little plug that, so she's the founder and lead instructor at Soleil, and it is the first place that I ever found that got me to go regularly and consistently. And that was something that I've spoken about on the podcast and
Yes,
with.
we've talked
So
about this.
I have so much respect for her and gratitude for the space that she has created, and really feeling welcome in a place like that. So thank you. I just want to give you some kudos and props there on that because it really is, at least from my perspective, a great environment that you've created here locally, right? And I wish like more and more people could experience it and be a part of it. So I just want to give you thanks for that.
Well, thank you. I am very excited to be here. Very excited to see you. Always a pleasure to see you. Ashley is always the smiling gem in the front row of the studio who I know I can look at and just shout out. So I'm very excited. Thank you guys for having me.
Awesome. We're
Can
excited
I
to get
just say
into it.
I'm not surprised that Ashley's in the front row? That fact does not surprise me.
It depends. Or that back corner, right? But I do love to be in that front spot in front of the mirror. I like to look at myself when I'm doing it. I don't know why. But okay, awesome. Well, let's dive right into it. And I'd love to just start, obviously we heard a little bit in your bio, but go ahead and just start, whatever you feel called to share, but just share a little bit about your journey in terms of like what feels most relevant to getting the audience acclimated with you and how you got here.
Sure. So, my background is in the agency world. I worked in agencies for over a decade, and I actually went to college for broadcast journalism. I wanted to be a sideline reporter. My first job out of school was at ESPN. So, I took a very interesting path to get to where I am today. And I say all of this because I really believe that every single step I took led me to where I am today and was a really important part of this whole path to owning the studio and where I am now. Once I was at ESPN, I realized it wasn't actually what I wanted to do, and I ended up leaving there. I always say I got really lucky with where social media was at the time because this was the early 2010s. It was around 2012. Social media was really becoming a thing and brands were just starting to use it. So I really cut my teeth in this space from a professional perspective as people were learning it. So I got very lucky because now everybody knows it, everybody considers themselves to be an expert, and it's a completely different beast. So I started working in the agency world in 2012, and it was long before social media even was what it was a couple of years later. Fell in love with it. I was able to use my writing background that I used, in journalism school and felt like I really found something that I enjoyed. And when I moved back to Baltimore, I started at an agency on the traditional PR side. I was really interested in PR as well. There's a lot that goes hand in hand with journalism. You learn a lot about the PR world as a journalism major. You spend time in newsrooms, a lot of writing, all of that stuff. Um, and we had a couple of social clients, but not nearly as many as we did by the time that I left. And I quickly realized that there was an opportunity to kind of step in and just really build up the social media part of our PR team. And so that's what I did. I became our first social media director, built the whole team, learned paid social, organic social, influencer. I spearheaded all of that at the agency. And then in 2018, I decided I wanted to become a group fitness instructor. Outside of the agency world, if I wasn't at work, I was at the gym. And I always loved group fitness classes. I loved the community. That was how I made a lot of my friends. And I wanted to get involved and I wanted to become an instructor and just kind of continue to further that as well. So I did a weekend long training. I became a body pump instructor. That was my all-time favorite class. And I started teaching body pump. So before and after work, you could find me at the gym teaching class. And I loved it. And I loved it so much that I decided in 2019 that I was going to pursue my 200-hour yoga teacher training because I was also a very avid yoga student. I practiced at Core Power like 5 to 6 times a week. Again, a place where I made a lot of my friends, and I wanted to just continue my growth as an instructor. So I did the 200-hour training. Right after that, they offered a 50-hour sculpt training. I hated sculpt. I never wanted to teach it. I never wanted to take it, but I was like, I'm in this learning mode. I'm just going to do it. It's 50 hours. That's nothing compared to 200 hours. And then I fell in love with teaching it. And so then I was teaching and I was working, and my entire life was basically one job or the other. Um, and I loved teaching so much. I mean, I would pack my schedule. The agency world is very cutthroat. I was usually in the office, this is pre-COVID days, by 8 o'clock. We started our work day at 9, but I was usually in the office by 8 at the latest, and I would leave at like 7:30 or 8 at night unless I was teaching. So it was just really long days, but I loved it. I loved all of it, and I was really, really happy and excited with where I was going. Enter the pandemic, and the digital world exploded. We were a traditional advertising agency. We had out of home, we had TV, we had PR, social, all of the advertising channels, but everything shifted to digital during the pandemic because nobody was leaving their house. Everybody was on their computer. And I got really, really burnt out really fast. My team was drowning. We did everything we could to keep our clients. And so we shifted so much of the agency revenue and all of these clients to my team. And it was just really, really tough for me. And so as we came out of lockdown, back in lockdown, out of lockdown, I was able to teach a little bit during the pandemic, in a limited capacity. And that was the thing that really was just continuing to light me up. I decided in 2021 that I wanted to make a change and I wanted to see for myself if I was really burning out from that particular agency and just the cutthroat environment or the agency world in general. So I took a role at RKPR, which is based in San Diego. And about a month into being out there, I realized that it was the agency world for me. I was able to transfer from Core Power in Baltimore to Core Power in San Diego, which was amazing. So I was still teaching when I was out there. And I realized that I didn't want to sit in front of a computer all day, every day from 5 or 6 in the morning to 8 or 9 o'clock at night. Because I was on the West Coast, but part of my team was on the East Coast, I was really glued to a laptop constantly. And the only time that I ever felt like myself was when I was stepping into the studio to teach. And even then, I was so stressed at that point that I would be checking my email during class, which if you are one of my instructors now, is a big no. We don't go on our phones during class, but I just couldn't detach myself. And so I knew that the only way to make fitness my life full time would be to create my own studio. It's very tough to make it as an instructor unless you have A lot, somebody backing you financially, and like I will be completely honest because I think a lot of people are misled by people they see on the internet. It's very hard to make it full time as an instructor unless you have somebody to help take some of the financial burden off of you. Or maybe, you have multiple other jobs that are supporting you. It's just one thing that I really want to change about the fitness industry is that I think you should be able to make a career from instructing, and there just needs to be a change in terms of pay structure and benefits. That's a whole other conversation. I feel very strongly about it. So I was in San Diego. I had signed a lease. I couldn't leave. So I decided to make a plan that I was going to stick it out until the end of the summer and give myself a couple of months at the end of the year before I was planning to move back to Baltimore just to enjoy California. I love Southern California. San Diego is beautiful. It's amazing. And I continued to work my PR job. I worked many, many, many hours. But I also started really putting together the plan for the studio, picking up every single class that I could to continue teaching. And as the months went on and I got closer to moving back, I knew that I made the right decision. It was a tough decision. It was a tough conversation with my boss about it, but she was extremely supportive, as a female founder herself. She was like, go after what you want. And that was really I had obviously consulted people in my life, but that was really a standout moment for me because I felt like having another female sit and say that to me was what I needed to hear. So I moved back to Baltimore, this big plan to open my studio back in Baltimore where my friends and family were. Long story short, I ended up signing a lease with somebody who was a big prominent developer in Baltimore that was running a major Ponzi scheme. So I signed a lease on a beautiful building that was being renovated, and I was supposed to be in the space by the end of the summer of 2024. Come end of summer 2024, no work had been done. There was no roof, nothing. I also happened to live across the street from the building, so I saw it every single day. And I got yanked around for quite a few months. I ended up pulling out of the lease, renegotiating, signing again. And then in the beginning of 2024, yeah, the beginning of 2024, so that was all 2023. The beginning of 2024, I I had been dating my now husband Tom, who lives in Lewes, and I knew I wanted to open a location down here. I want to open multiple studios, so I had my eye on Lewes already. And I reached out to the realtor that helped him find the location for his gym and was like, I can't get any answers in Baltimore. I don't know what's going on. They're not responding to me. They're not responding to my lawyers, but I know that I want to start moving forward on another location because I can't just sit here and wait for this much longer. And thank God I did. He found the perfect space for me about 2 months in. As I was signing the lease and moving forward on the space here, everything exploded in Baltimore. All of this information came out about these major Ponzi schemes, the amount of debt that this man was in. The building to this day is still not finished. So it was a big, like, trust my gut moment. I was very scared to sign the lease because at that point, I would have been on the hook for two leases, but thank God I did. When everything started to explode, I mean, it was all over the news, all over the newspapers, lots of coverage, media coverage. So I was able to get out of my lease rather quickly after that. There's no denying facts that are written and, legal, he's in a lot of legal trouble. And so at the end of the summer of 2024, packed up, moved down here. We started the build out in the fall of last year. We finished early in 20 or fall of 2024. We finished in early 2025, and I was finally able to open my first studio in April of 2025.
Oh my gosh, that's so exciting.
Yeah,
And
it is,
also
especially after
like
all that.
a crazy ride. I was very
Mhm.
like intrigued.
Yes, it was
Stay
wild.
with your timeline. I just love the transition of how you've like moved around and just trusted your gut with what direction to go in
Yeah,
and
even
like to
after
get to
like
this point.
the issues in Baltimore, I feel like I would have been like, wait, is this a sign? Right? Like, am I not supposed to do this? So the fact that you kind of kept trusting and seeing it through, I think says a lot, right?
Yeah.
Just to your intuition and trusting that. Oh wow, a lot
Yeah,
there.
for sure. So when you look back, like what were the first signs to you that your corporate career no longer aligned with kind of who you were becoming? Or I think as you put it, like when you would step into a class, that's when you felt the most like yourself. So like what was starting to happen that you really felt that? Obviously, you're working long hours, but what other things were happening?
It was really noticing when I felt lit up, when I was physically exhausted, but mentally so excited. There were days in San Diego where I would teach 3 or 4 classes, and physically I would be so tired, but I would feel so alive when I would get home and I would be like, this is what I want to do. And really just furthering relationships with my students every single time you hear how you've helped change someone's life, how you've helped inspire them. Like that really kept me going. The more that I would have these conversations and the more that I would spend my time with these people, the more I realized that I really do want to make a difference in the world. And I mean, PR is a wonderful career path for people. You can do a lot of good. I just wanted to make more of an impact than I was able to make as a PR professional. And I saw a very clear path in the fitness world, not just for my students, but for my instructors as well. Once you become an instructor, it's very life-changing because it's one of the few things that I found that people do as adults that really force them to trust themselves, to push out of their comfort zone and to grow. I think a lot of people tend to choose comfort, especially as we get older. And so being able to create a space not just for my students here, but also a wonderful group of instructors that I have now has been honestly the best. It's been the biggest joy of my life.
Oh, I love that.
I love
That's
that.
awesome. I
Yeah,
love
and I love
that.
like being able to, be a part of it and see it in real life and really, again, like just to echo, what you're creating. I know that you are making a difference to people, you know what I mean? So yeah, I
Thank
love
you.
that. I'd love to get your perspective on, okay, so you are this hardcore corporate professional, right? You're kicking butt in that world, but you make this decision to move to entrepreneurship. What did you have to let go of in terms of how you looked at yourself, like that self-identity to step into that new role, right? Like, how did you reconcile, like, okay, I used to be this person and this is how my days were spent and this is how I viewed myself and now I'm this. Like, how did that evolve, if that
Oh
makes
man.
sense?
I mean, that to be honest is still evolving because I get to wear the PR and marketing hat so often at the studio. And I also help my husband, Tom, with his gym. It was tough for me. It was really tough for me because for the longest time, associated so much of my identity with my career and with the success of that career. And so once I left and I was in this kind of this limbo period of opening the studio, I felt like I constantly had to justify to people what my past had been. And that was really hard for me to let go of corporate PR Claire and just be soon to be studio owner Claire. Um, I really had to let go of this like insane hustle culture. I think there's a time and a place, obviously, but I was and still am I would identify as a workaholic. And that was something that I learned that I really needed to let go of. It is very much a work in progress. I talk about this with my husband a lot because as a business owner, you have to give yourself time. You have to give yourself downtime and space. You can't survive if you don't. But it was really hard for me. And it was also really hard for me because I did love my work. I loved my clients. It was very hard for me to step away from that and look at what they were doing and not be like, man, like I really miss that. I wish I would have been a part of this campaign or that. So it was very hard. And to be honest, something else that was really challenging for me that I think people don't talk about is when you go from the corporate world and then you become your own boss, your entire life changes and you have nobody telling you what to do. And you really have to get very disciplined with your schedule and keep yourself on track because there's nobody else that's going to do it. And I've talked about it with a few of my friends who own businesses. You have to set up your day and have a structure. Otherwise, I mean, days could go by where you don't change out of your pajamas, you don't leave the house. And I think that that can be really detrimental to people. So for me, I also had to learn how to put my life schedule together. Waking up early, my people would say to me, "Oh, it must be so great. You can be your own boss. You can wake up whenever you want." Like I still get up. I mean, before I opened the studio, I was still getting up at 6 o'clock in the morning. Now I get up at 4. But I knew that I needed to instill this discipline in my life so that I didn't just completely fall apart.
Yeah. Did you have a mentor that kind of coached you on that or to say like, this is how you should structure your day, or things to think about, or did you just figure it out?
A little bit. So my old boss at the agency that I worked at in Baltimore, he retired in 2021, coincidentally, the year that I left. He's like a second father to me. And he and I are very, very close. We talk all the time. And he was the co-president of the agency. So obviously he understands the business world. And to a point, he was his own boss. He ran the agency with the other president. And I leaned on him a lot throughout all of this. And he has been a great mentor, a great coach, and just somebody to reinforce things, when I would be like, I feel like I'm not doing enough. Because when you are in the corporate world and you associate your professional success with your personal productivity and almost value, it's really hard when you're used to all of these wins all of the time. And then like sometimes some weeks for me, like the biggest win was that I made it through the week without dealing with some catastrophe in construction, or I made it through the week and finished putting together my marketing plan, things that I used to do in 6 hours that I would take the whole week to do. So I just felt like I was less productive. So yes, he was very helpful, and I am very lucky in that I do know a handful of other studio owners who have been incredible sounding boards and people that I've gone to. I also have a therapist who's been super helpful to me, and she was the one who instilled in me, you need to rest, you need to take time now, because once you open the studio, you're not going to have a lot of it. And that is something I tell people when they come to me and say that they want to open a business, like take the time to rest now, because once you open, I mean, for me, it was 6 months of like all gas, no breaks, no stopping, 3 to 4 hours of sleep a night. And that's just the reality when you're opening a brick and mortar business, especially a studio. But having people in my life like that was extremely helpful, because otherwise I would have just put my head down and ran myself into the ground.
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes
I
sense.
I think that a lot of what you said is helpful to people, just women in general, because you struggle with these things no matter if you're in the corporate world or not in the corporate world. I think my question for you, and it's not like we didn't really like go over this question, but just as you're talking, myself and my husband both own our own businesses, and we left our careers to open those businesses. And a lot of times I think people get a little bit of pushback when they leave that like traditional corporate or like career where people saw that that's what they were going to do and their identity is tied to that. And then they leave that and they become an entrepreneur. So, how did you kind of work through that, if you experienced that at all? Were there people who kind of doubted like that you should leave your corporate career and get into fitness? Because that's two totally different ends of the spectrum, you know what I mean? So, did you find that you had anything like that that you had to overcome?
For most of the people that know me very well, nobody was surprised, because my dad was an entrepreneur. He owned his own company. I grew up watching him just work his butt off. I mean, constantly. And I mean, I never saw him take a day off of work his entire life. And so growing up watching that, I think that is what established such a solid work ethic in me, which is what got me all the way through college and into my early career. And so most people that know me very well know that when I put my mind to it, I'm going to figure out a way to do it. I always say, everything is figure outable. You just have to want it enough and you will figure out a way to do it. For example, the studio, it might not be in the location where I thought it was, but I made it happen. But there definitely were some people on the outside who knew me, especially people that I knew from work, who were like, why would you want to leave that job where you make so much money? And I'm like, it doesn't matter if I'm not happy, and that to me was a big thing, because I think a lot of times people choose financial stability over happiness. And that is, to me, something I'm not willing to negotiate and sacrifice. And I say that knowing that it's probably a little bit of a privileged decision, because I did save. I mean, I was very particular about my path in this. And once I made my mind that I was going to leave, I saved every dollar that I could. I was constantly saving. I was teaching, I was consulting on the side, for former clients. I was doing everything I could to save up, knowing that the end goal was opening the business. So there were people who didn't know me as well who would kind of like look at me cockeyed, like, why would you want to do that? And for me, it was always because I'm not happy, because I know that there's more, and I would rather try and fail than stay in this forever and continue down this path that isn't fulfilling me anymore.
Yeah, I love
Yeah.
that. I think that's so important because I think that sometimes when you have that kind of noise, it can sometimes make you question yourself, even if initially you're like, okay, this is what I'm doing. But then the noise creeps in and you're like, well, like, are they
Hmm.
right? Should I leave that? So I know that that was something that my husband and I both struggled with when we started our own businesses. That's why I was interested to know that. But I love how you said your work ethic. Like when you have a strong work ethic and you know you're going to give 110%, you're going to figure it out. And I'm the same as you. Like I'm not willing to sacrifice my happiness for a specific paycheck or a specific job. I think too many women stay in situations where they're not happy, jobs that they're not happy, relationships where they're not happy because they're like too afraid to step out of their comfort zone and see what's on the other side. So I love that you were willing to do that. That takes a lot of courage. So,
Thank
Yeah,
you.
absolutely. I loved hearing how you were so diligent, like even like saving money, like making plans, like kind of once you made the decision, you knew like, okay, I can't just do it right this moment, right? Like I have to do this in the right way so that you're kind of setting yourself up for success. So it sounds like you were already, going about it intentionally or mindfully. But did you learn things along the way that you're like, man, I wish I would have known this beforehand, or, I would have done things differently if I had known XYZ, or, is there anything, again, like for women who maybe they make a decision like this, then to like, okay, yeah, this is the sign that I need to kind of leave and make a change. Any advice on that front? Like, hey, make sure you're thinking about this before you make the leap or before you're kind of pursuing it.
I mean, something that there are things that come up throughout starting a business that you just really don't learn until you go through it the first time. For me, honestly, understanding the wide scope of startup costs was something that I just had no idea what to expect. And you get, for me in my specific situation, opening a studio, you talk to general contractors, you talk to all these people that have opened studios. You never have any idea how much things are actually going to cost until it's done. For example, my studio ended up going 25% over what my original proposal was from the general contractor. So I think the biggest thing that I learned is that you have to over prepare in every sense of that statement. I mean, whether it's extra savings for you, just budgeting more if you are going to build out a space. And you can't be afraid to put your head down and get scrappy. I once I left the agency world, when I moved back to Baltimore, I did have former clients that reached out to me and colleagues who said, will you consult on this? Will you freelance this? And so I opened up my own small LLC and I consulted. And there were so many times along the way when I said, okay, I'm only going to be able to give you 3 more months because, according to this plan, I am going to be getting ready to make moves. And, there were multiple times where I just had to put my head down and be like, you know what? It's not happening on this timeline. I can give you 3 more months here, 6 months here. And so I think you can't be afraid of stepping back and saying like I need more time. I want to keep doing this. That PR consulting really kept me afloat for the entire time when I was assumed that I was going to have my studio in Baltimore and didn't. I had moved back with a purpose. I left my job thinking in San Diego thinking I would get back to Baltimore and build quickly, and obviously I didn't. And you can't be afraid to admit that you maybe made a mistake or you did something too early. You just have to accept it and move forward. And that was something that I learned very quickly, and if people judge you, that's their own problem. You have to really release caring about what other people say about you. A lot of people, especially when you are a female entrepreneur, have a lot of opinions about you, and you just have to put your head down and not care about what people say. People are going to judge you. They're going to say things about you, whether it's coming from a place of envy, a place of unknowing. You'll have a lot of supporters, and that will typically outweigh the judgment, but you just have to put your head down. And I learned that pretty quickly because people that I thought would be Mo 99% of the people in my life were super supportive. There were a handful of people that, when I look back, I'm really disappointed in how they reacted and how they just chose not to show up for me in a really, really big time of my life.
Yeah, and it's tough where, you could have 99 people cheering you on, and that one person unfortunately leaves that bigger mark sometimes on you, which is just a challenge, I think. Is that something that always came naturally to you to like not listen so much to what other people are saying, or is that something that was kind of new and you really had to work on during this phase of your life?
It did not come naturally. I was the world's biggest people pleaser. And honestly, it's something that I've worked on a lot in the last 6 years in therapy. I mean, my therapist and I have had so many conversations about not caring about what people think of you and letting other people's judgments and what they have to say be theirs and a reflection of them. And it's something that I wish I would have learned earlier, especially when I was a younger female. Growing up in college and getting into a relationship in my early 20s where I let other people's opinions of me take precedent over my own opinion of myself. And so it is something that I've had to work on a lot. And it's something that now when I have the opportunity, whether it's with my young front desk staff or my instructors, I am instilling it in them constantly. When if they get upset about something that happened in class or somebody came to their class and didn't come back, I'm like, that's not a reflection of you. You have to put your head down. If there's a big issue and you did something really wrong that is causing them not to come back, let me deal with it. You focus on your relationship with yourself, work on your confidence with yourself. And it's almost been healing for me because I've been able to show up and be a person that I wish I would have had when I was that age.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think confidence in general is such a huge gap for so many women. And I see it even in kids too. I can see that in my daughters, right? And you're like thinking of how you can help to improve that or like give them the tools to lean and build that. So I love that you touched on that. And then before I know Alyssa has more questions, I just wanted to like highlight one thing that I thought was really important. I think that you said earlier on or a couple minutes ago was around, you have to be willing to admit to yourself maybe when you did make a mistake or when things didn't, work out in the way that you expected, and that's okay. And I think it's one, yes, it's okay. Admit, accept it and move on, like kind of figure out what the next step is. But also, and I've noticed this in my own life and journey as well, is like everything does happen for a reason. And so even when things don't work out in the way that maybe you thought at one point, it was like it is working out. Like it's all because it's part of whatever's next, or you know what I mean, whatever realization you'll have even years down the line. You know what I mean? And so I think that's just
Mhm.
something that I wanted to reiterate because I heard you mention it because I think women can definitely also get down on them when I did make a mistake or this isn't working out or it looks different or it's this and that, right? And then that can kind of knock down your confidence. It can make you
Yes.
question yourself. It can make you question yourself for the next decision you make. You know
Oh,
what I
yeah.
mean? So I think that's just really important. I wanted to kind of piggyback off that.
I
Yeah.
mean, listen, when everything was exploding in Baltimore, I was like, I was really down. I was struggling and my husband Tom owns a gym here and thank God for him because he really talked me through it. There was a point where I was like, I should just give up, go back to PR. I know I'm good at it. I know I can get a job in 5 seconds and I'm, just going to walk away. And I mean, I vividly remember we had this conversation here in Lewes. We were at dinner one night and he was like, you can be sad for 24 hours about this, and then you have to figure out how to move forward. And I mean, that's the trainer and the coach in him, but it's what I needed to hear. And I say this because that was what really helped me get my head on straight and realize it's not a no. There's something that there's a big red flag in Baltimore. For whatever reason, this didn't happen. And to be honest, if that Baltimore studio hadn't fallen apart, who knows if I would be here now? We would have had to continue to do long distance. It would have been really hard owning our own businesses in two different places because the beginning of our relationship, he was building his gym. I was waiting for the studio. We had so much flexibility, so we could go back and forth. and see each other. And once I moved here and his gym was really starting to ramp up, I was like, there's no way we could have continued to do this for that much longer. We just wouldn't have had the time. And if I hadn't been able to move here and open this studio, we probably wouldn't have been able to make it work. We would have tried, but it just would have been really, really hard. And my relationship, I mean, my marriage is the number one most important thing to me in my life. And that is another thing that I think a lot of female entrepreneurs feel bad about saying, but my business is my baby. I love the studio more than anything, but I'm not going to have that studio for 30, 40 years. I want to have somebody I can build a life with and a relationship that fulfills me. And I think it is important to say that because a lot of my young career years, I was told you need to put your career in front of everything. And I think that it's important to see that you can have it all. And so if that all hadn't exploded and I hadn't moved here when I had, who knows what would have happened. We got engaged at the beginning of 2025. We got married in November. We had this crazy year last year, and I don't know how it would have unfolded if I had had to open the Baltimore studio. So I say everything happens for a reason. I
Yeah.
think they just wanted me out of Baltimore so I could get here.
Exactly. Sometimes you have to like also know when to let something go, right? Because like you had a vision of like, no, but this is what I wanted. This is it. And then it's like, but okay, is this the challenge I need to overcome? Or is this like, okay, I need to release this and
Yeah.
realize that it's, on to the next or, a different shift in that. Just really
Easier said
interesting.
than done. I hung on to
Yes,
that and
absolutely.
yeah, but yes, you do have to just let it go.
Yeah. I think it's too realizing as an entrepreneur, it's not a consistent upward, like as you're starting something, you're not just going to always trend up. Like
Oh,
there's
no.
hills and there's valleys and there's hills and there's valleys. And I think sometimes it's easy to get really discouraged in the valley seasons, like when you're trying to figure it out. And then that's when those thoughts creep in of like, well, I could get that job in 5 seconds. You know what I mean? Like, I know I've had times where I've been like, wait, but when you push through and kind of just remember your why, like, why am I doing this? Like, what is my end goal here? I think that that is really helpful. All right, well, we're going to transition into some questions that we like to ask our guests. But one thing I want to know, if there's a listener sitting in her corporate job feeling like there has to be more than this, what reflective questions would you personally, invite her to ask herself before changing anything externally?
The two, and I say this to people all the time, I'm the number one advocate of telling people to quit their jobs and go after what they want. So if you want to be pushed to do that, come to me. One, if money wasn't an issue, what job would you choose? And for me, when I started to think about that when I was back in my corporate world, it was always fitness. It was always, I want to be an instructor. I want to be in the fitness world. And two, what do you want your life to look like 5 years from now, 10 years from now? 15, 20 years from now. And you have to be really honest with yourself about what it looks like in every facet of your life. Not just what do you want your job to be, but what do you want your personal life to look like? What do you want your relationships to look like? Do you want to have kids? And you really have to think about it because I realized that I would have had to continue to make sacrifices in the agency world to continue to be successful and move up the way that I wanted to. I had female bosses that either chose not to have children because the job required so much of their energy, or I had female bosses who had nannies and a slew of people that would take care of their kids and they never got to see their kids. For me, I've always wanted to be a mom, and I also have always wanted to have a very active role in raising my children. So I knew that, and that is not no judgment whatsoever. It's just growing up with a stay-at-home mom who was very hands-on. I knew that I wanted to be the same way. So I knew that for where I was headed, that probably wasn't going to be able to happen. Fitness and being active has always been very important to me. And I also knew that the further I progressed in that career, the less time I would have for it, especially as I had children. I wouldn't be able to get up and go teach a class in the morning or go teach a class after work. I would need to come home. So you have to think about what you want your life to look like and then get really honest with yourself about what is the most important to you. And then I think you can figure out where you can make small changes. And in the world of side hustles, I do think that teaching on the side for 7 years solidified what I wanted to do for me and just reinforced it to me. So by the time I was ready to leave, I already knew I love this. I could do this all day long. I can figure out a path forward. This is the right move.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I love that you had that clarity, early on, right? Because you were already teaching and like had exposure there and everything. One thing I would just um offer to anyone listening that maybe they're feeling this nudge, but maybe don't have as much clarity is maybe like, okay, well, start exploring things that light you up or that you're interested in. Maybe that's somewhere to start. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
there's more you're feeling a pull, but you're not really sure what. So just start playing around. You know what I mean? Like start taking classes or learning this or learning that, or you know what I mean? And and then
Yeah.
start to find where you're pulled and what your passions are. Because I feel like a lot of women these days also, especially if they're working and have kids and have all the things, they don't even know what they like.
Hmm.
They don't even know what their hobbies are or passions. They don't have any
Yeah.
hobbies, like I can admit to that. So I think that's really important too for women is, allowing your space or allowing yourself, to play around and explore and to even find what lights you up, so that you can maybe make that decision at some point, right? Whenever the time is right for you.
Yeah.
I loved hearing about your story. One other question, because we like to ask this to all of our guests, is okay, so Hustle and Harmony podcast, you spoke to the hustle culture. You get it, right? That's what we're trying to give the tools for, at least some encouragement to women is like, okay, let's find harmony within this world that we all live in. For you, what does harmony mean? And especially in this season of your life, being a business owner, right? And business is still a baby, right? It's not even a year old yet. So I know you're running on all cylinders right now, right? Getting the business up and running, but how do you find harmony? What does that mean to you now in this season of life?
I mean, I really associate it with balance, and joy, to be honest. And for me, I mean, I am lucky in that I love being a student as much as I love being an instructor. So getting into classes and making sure that I'm still carving out time for myself is really important, but also finding intentional time where I can do things that I enjoy and spend time with the people that are important to me. When I first opened, I don't think I saw anybody other than Tom for like 2 months. I was just so busy. We were up before the sun, we got home after, and it's just, you are just going and going and going. But then I started to learn, okay, I'm not at this stage where I can take a weekend off or a full day, but find times where you can take a couple of hours. Or on the weekends, I'm in the studio working in the morning. I get home around 12 and then I have the rest of the day. And you just have to get intentional with your time. I think that with the way of the world, with social media and Netflix, and there's so many ways where people can just sit and kind of veg out and lose track of time. Um, you just have to be mindful of what you're doing. I don't want to come home from a long day and sit and just scroll on my phone for 3 hours. I want to come home and take my dog for a walk and spend time with my husband and like cook dinner. And those are things that kind of help me fill back up my cup after a long day. And you just have to get intentional. And sometimes, sure, yeah, lay on the couch and scroll for an hour. Like I've done that. I'm not saying that I don't do that. I'm human, but you do have to just become more intentional with your time.
Yeah, I would second that for sure. I feel like even in the past year, like taking on more like personal interests outside of work and wifing and momming and all the things. Like even though I was just saying this to my mom, like last week or so, I was like, yes, like my calendar is really crazy and it's hectic, but I don't really feel stressed because like the things that I'm doing, I'm liking or I'm interested in, I'm passionate about, so it's like, yes, my calendar looks full, but I don't feel it. It still feels harmonious in a way, right? Because where I am spending time and like choosing to spend my time are things that, I like. You know what I
Yes.
mean?
Yes.
So I definitely will second that as well, for sure.
Yeah, I agree. It's being intentional, kind of being where your feet are too. I know as a mom, like that's something that I've had to learn that like it's also okay to like just be where I am in that moment to be intentional with my time. So I think that's important. Well,
Yeah.
Claire, it's been so fun learning about you and your studio and just your journey to get here. Thank you so much for being on. We really appreciate it. Do you want to tell everybody, in case they're in the Lewes area, how they can find your studio if they want to come check it out?
Yes, thank you. This has been wonderful. Ash, I'm so excited to see you tomorrow. You can find my studio online. Our website is sweatsoleil, Soleil.com. That is also our social handle across the board, Facebook, Instagram. We're starting up a TikTok. So Sweat Soleil. And in person, we are in Lewes. We are down at the beach. We are off of Route 9 in a neighborhood called the Vineyards, and you cannot miss us. Black and white studio, as everybody likes to call it, but online Sweat Soleil across the board.
Okay,
Thank
awesome.
you
Well,
so much for being here. Really excited to have you and to
you.
hear, things I learned about you, right? It was really cool just to hear more about your history and your road to this point in your life, because this is how I've known you, right? So to
Yeah.
hear about the history behind it is really cool. So I appreciate it and just your vulnerability and honesty around your own journey. So I'm sure it's going to speak to some women out there who have that inkling in the back of their mind and give them that little nudge or, inspo that they need right now. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
It is amazing that you two do this and provide the inspiration for women because I think these are conversations that people need to hear and inspiration that people need. So it's incredible that you're doing this for people.
Oh, well, thank
Thank you.
you.
I appreciate the
We
reflection.
appreciate that.
Yes.
Yes. And for those who are listening, this is going to be the first episode we've dropped since before the holidays. So we're excited for this episode. But if you want to catch any more of our episodes, you can find the Hustle and Harmony podcast on any of the platforms where you get your podcasts. You can find us on Instagram at the Hustle Harmony Pod. Anything else, Ash, that I'm forgetting?
Maybe one thing I'll add, because we were just talking about this before
Oh,
we
yes.
hopped on, and in the spirit of harmony, we were talking about the podcast and everything. And so we are going to adjust or like shift in terms of like how often we're going to drop episodes. We just want to give ourselves more grace to not put as much pressure of like things need to be certain times or this or that, right? So we're still coming to you. We're still going to find fresh guests, but it might be a little bit more sporadic. It might not be as regimented. So just, give us grace as well. We appreciate that. And we're here trying to practice what we preach, right? We want to be here. We want to keep doing it, but we also want to feel good and make sure we're showing up in the right way. So just wanted to be transparent about that as well.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
so happy to have you here and thank you to everyone listening. Make sure to like, subscribe, do all the things,
Do all the
and then we'll
things.
catch you on the next one.
Yes. Happy New Year, everybody.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.